Hi, welcome back to our final VBS Performing Arts Camp tutorial, the final chapter of our Vacation Bible School Performing Arts Camp. The surprises we encountered and how we dealt with those, what we learned, what we might do better next time, and how God worked it all out for His purposes anyway. Coming into the actual week of the camp, I still had this one big thing left to do, something I don't ever usually leave until the last minute, and that was making up the specific schedule. This is the schedule you need to make sure that every scene gets rehearsed and everybody knows what they're doing for the actual play. Kind of essential to actually being able to produce the play and have it work. Plus, we needed to fit in snack time for a bunch of hungry teens and kids. Not to look like a complete slacker, I'd been mulling over schedule ideas for sessions 2, 3, and 4 most of the summer. For some reason, I could never quite get it done. I was feeling the pressure of, I gotta make sure the schedule works, I gotta make sure the kids are all busy, or the show's gonna flop. I need to make sure everybody's in the right places at the right time covering the right scenes, or the show's gonna flop. Plus, the volunteers are gonna be miserable if the kids aren't on a strict schedule, and the play's gonna flop. Basically, I was just stressing out every time I informed God, because He didn't know what we needed, that I needed a schedule. But every time, I felt like I was always hearing God say, stop worrying. This time's going to be different, Teresa. I'll show you what you need to know when you need to know it, and I'll show you what to do when you need to do it. Okay, it's going to be before VBS PAC starts, right? This whole situation was definitely out of my comfort zone. I eventually chose to just breathe and stop stressing about it and trust God to reveal to me, one day at a time, how this was all going to go. Don't you know that peaceful attitude permeated the entire set of volunteers that we had and the teen leads, so that was a good thing. Now, for session 1, the auditions and the casting was planned, including contingencies for the numbers of attendees fluctuating more or less than had registered. A fitting schedule for the rest of the week would have to come later. It was definitely time to make sure that we all let go of any expectations except that God would be with us as He promises. All right, surprise number 1. Despite all our advertising and enthusiasm, the size of our camp registration started out at only 20 kids. We had planned for a lot more than that, but 20 could work. Plenty of kids to play parts for the play we'd chosen, but no extras. Surprise number 2. One day before camp, with last-minute cancellations, we went from 20 registrants to 16, then 13, then 11. So I thought, well, we can squeak by with 11. After a small but very good session 1 audition, our teen leads and the 3 grown-up actors who'd all practiced over the summer were very confident we could pull it off. So I went home and created the schedule for the next day's session, session 2, spreading out our 11 kid actors where they fit in best. It was gonna work. The show was not gonna flop. Then came surprise number 3. 10 minutes before session 2 was about to begin, I got a phone call from one of our 11 that a family emergency had come up, and they were going to be out of town for the rest of the week. So down to 10, you think? Oh no. This was the oldest of 3 brothers who had auditioned quite well the night before. Very talented kids. And all 3 had to back out, which brought our final number down to 8 participants. So instant quick prayer and brainstorming session with the other lead actors, and we came up with a revamped casting and schedule for that session. That was a good lesson for our teens and everybody on how to be flexible in live theater. As it turned out, we now had exactly the right amount of kids so that the 8 kids we had and all the actors except for the main character could each play double parts. The kids were actually super excited that they got to play more than one character, they got to wear 2 costumes, and they got to have more time on stage. Of course, I tried very hard not to let on how concerned I was that we'd never fit everything in rehearsal-wise, and then the show's gonna flop. After all, if they were game, who was I to discourage them? And here's the test. Did I believe God cared, and was He working here or not? And how did I know what beautiful things having a small, intimate cast might bring about? Surrender to win was the key for all of us at this point. How do we turn this test into a testimony? Well, whenever the doubts and the stresses came creeping in, I really had to grab onto one of my very favorite life verses, Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Surprise number 4. Funny thing, Turns out our teen leads, the costumer, lots of our volunteers, even the snack lady, had all been secretly hoping, I think that's called praying, that our VBS PAC attendance was going to be small so they could have a chance to really get to know each kid and have a chance to impact their lives with the love of Jesus. Plus, they thought a smaller camp would be a lot more fun. Well, I guess they got their wish and got their prayers answered, and don't you know, they were right. I love that God had already prepared their hearts to connect deeply with our attendees before we even started. To tell you the truth, a few of our kids were so extremely shy that they simply wouldn't have had the opportunity to grow into the confident little performers they grew into had it been a more crowded setting. Those kids would have been completely lost in the stampeding crowd. We all know the stories of Jesus seeking out that one person, that one lost sheep, and it's beautiful. Yes, he sometimes fed crowds of 5,000, plus women and children, but sometimes he met a single leper on the road, or a woman at a well, or a tax collector at his booth. It's beautiful when Jesus meets that individual life, and that's what he did for us. Each person grew in their love for God and the relationships with each other. Some of the kids are still hanging out together as a result. And we all grew in the area of putting on a live theater show in a week, being challenged and stretched in our performing abilities, and that's kind of the point of an intense performing arts camp, so that actually worked out great. It was precisely the fact that we had such a small group that our VBS PAC turned out to be such a blessing for every person involved. So in this case, smaller was better. Oh, and since we prepped for a larger group, there was the bonus that snack time was very abundant, which definitely pleased our teen boys especially. As a practical note, in communication with our parents, we decided that if we did do another VBS PAC, we might change up the timing to be earlier in the summer, or perhaps do a different time of day instead of evening sessions. And all that would be in hopes that we'd have a better turnout, but by better turnout, I mean just numerically better, because truly, by the end of our time together, our intimate group of volunteers and kids were each loved, known, seen, recognized, appreciated in very personal and unique ways. I think that means we had the best turnout for us this time. It's all good because God is all good all the time. I am really honored that you've tuned in with us for our journey. Thank you. If you do decide to try it, you can always contact us if you have questions. We're happy to help. And that help includes this fact. You never know what surprises, challenges, lessons, solutions, and blessings God has in store for you. God is always working. He's working in the waiting, and to put it in theater talk, he's working behind the scenes. I don't know everything about anything, but I do know if you ask God and listen, he'll let you know what he wants you to know, and he'll give you the strength to do what he wants you to do. You can totally do this thing.